And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is camouflage. And what we'll be talking about is how we often try to camouflage our feelings, or we put on a mask, so to speak, in our interactions with people. And we're going to have a look at what it means to let the mask go, and the dynamics of camouflage and all that good stuff. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling and the tingling, and the wonder of the fact that we have these sensations, and allow that to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that allows you the wonder of experiencing life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, camouflage. I remember some years ago, a friend of mine, I was upset about something, and a friend of mine says, you can see exactly what's going on your face. Like, this was a bad thing. It was a bad thing to see that I was upset, like I wasn't able to hide my upset. And, you guys who've been here long enough, you can see that I don't really hide my emotions. If I'm crying, I'm crying. If I'm animated, I'm animated. If I'm passionate, I'm passionate. And the bottom line for me around that is that there's alignment, being in alignment with yourself. That's a big deal. It gets very confusing when you might be upset and you're not able to show it. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome. It's so great to be with all of you. I so appreciate you, and Rosalind, thank you for chiming in, so that I know people are here. Anyway, there are certainly circumstances where it is a matter of our well-being to be not showing what we're feeling. Like, you might be really angry, and it might be really dangerous to be displaying that emotion. One of the things we've been talking about this week is different coping mechanisms and survival mechanisms that people develop in order to be able to weather or to get through or to survive certain situations where they're in danger. And we create these patterns, or we develop these patterns of camouflage, where we're not authentically presenting what's going on for us emotionally, particularly emotionally, because maybe it's not appropriate in that situation, or we're afraid of judgment, or we're afraid of retribution of some sort. However, like, this has always been a big issue for me, navigating a world where people say and do things that they don't mean, where they smile at to your face and then have nasty, horrible things to say, for instance, behind your back. And we talked the other day about gossiping and how gossiping is so divisive, how it just creates such a mess, energetically and actually, in life. And being able to be direct with people and authentic with people and expressing what's true for us, rather than trying to be something other than we are. When we're tuned in, we can maybe not in all situations, but in many situations, when we're tuned in, we can find ways to express what's going on without, for instance, I can be angry without throwing things. I can say, I am so angry right now, and that if I were, you would know. You would know, right? And the truth is, as children, we know that things are going awry. We know when things are wrong, even if the authorities in our life say, oh, no, everything's fine. We sense, and all of us humans have that capacity. I guess it gets dulled in many of us over years, and we ignore it, but we have this ability to sense emotion, its energy. So we're present to it, we experience it. And so if you're really angry at me and you're being all sweet and nice, on some level, I know, if you're hating me and you're being all sweet and nice on the surface, I feel that underlying emotion. And what happens is that it's creating this emotional dissonance, where I'm hearing you say one thing, and yet I'm feeling you on an entirely different level. And when that's the case, it creates a rift, it creates confusion, and it also creates a lack of safety, because what you're perceiving is that's what it is. The word, typically, it's not emotional dissonance, it's cognitive dissonance. It's like perceiving and thinking two different things that don't jive together. So if you're being all nice to me and I can feel the undercurrent, I can feel the disingenuousness, I can feel that it's not authentic. And certainly, as many of us who are empathic or very sensitive, highly sensitive people, many of us come from environments where we experience very mixed messages, right? And so there was this confusion. And when there's this sense of not knowing, like for me, one of my biggest questions has always been what's real and what's not real. And I see that this can tie back into experiences of people saying one thing and doing another, or people saying one thing and emoting in a different way, or being able to sense the emotional undercurrents that were at work in the environment. And what does that breed? It breeds a sense of unsafety. It breeds a sense of danger. And I find that many people operate in that way. Many people are much more adept than I at camouflaging their feelings, are much more adept at having a poker face. I'm not really good with a poker face, I'm afraid. When I'm excited, people can read me, I think, pretty well, because it is what it is, like, why pretend? So I guess, I mean, I know why pretend. The reason why pretend is out of fear, is to defend and protect ourselves from either real or imagined dangers. And the truth is that sometimes they are real dangers, and that's why we develop these coping mechanisms. That's why we develop these talents and skills to be able to be a chameleon. I was debating on whether to call today's topic camouflage or chameleon, because I believe that many of us have learned adaptive behaviors that enable us to shape ourselves to fit any situation, to be responding. I guess this is another thing about being in an environment that's unpredictable or changing all the time, is to be able to respond to the situation. Good morning, Dennis. You are so funny. Thank you so much. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us. We shape ourselves to be able to fit into a situation, to kind of, chameleons are adaptive. They can disappear into their environment. Good morning, Dido. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about camouflage and chameleons, and how, especially those of us who grew up in environments where the emotional undercurrents or the emotional atmosphere shifted on a dime. We learn to be hyper vigilant. We talked about that this week, but part of that is also that we learn to be adaptive. We learn to be responding to the current environment, to, like, we know when it's time to disappear, and we have these artful capabilities to disappear because it's safer, right? We can make ourselves small, we can make ourselves invisible, and kind of just fade into the woodwork, so that out of protection, right, we can blend like a chameleon. And I remember for years I'd have different friends, and mostly my friends didn't know each other, because that was dangerous, um, which is really interesting. But my friends were all different, so when I was with different friends, I was a different person. So I was all these different people because I had all these adaptive strategies, right? So it was interesting because I had the ability with all these different people to be playing out different parts of my personality. But what happened for me at that point is I didn't have a very strong core at all, because everything was outward, trying to respond to the externalities. And so I really didn't know who I was, because I was acting in all these different ways. I was behaving in all these different ways, in all these different contexts. And I think that there's some kind of balance around that, like different circumstances bring out different parts of ourselves too. It's not that it was make believe, it's not that it wasn't authentic, but it was pulling from different resources that might not have been very centered and aligned to a core presence, if that makes any sense. So Rosalind says, my first instinct is to decline an invitation. I'm not sure what will happen if I don't show up. No matter what, the ties are to the party. I don't want to pretend. um, this time I was honest up front that I didn't want to commit because I'm thinking I'll be getting stressed on time rather than stressing out if I'll have enough energy to do both. So, so it's interesting that you're saying my first instinct is to decline an invitation. And when I'm wondering if part of your first instinct is to decline an invitation because of the social dynamics. I'm wondering if that is part of what's going on for you, or you're not committing to things because of timing, and you don't want to get stressed out around time. um, I'm not really clear, but sometimes it's hard to um, navigate social dynamics. So Dido says, I used to adopt the likes and dislikes of boyfriends I had. Well, Dido, I don't think you're alone in that at all. I think that this can happen with friendships as well. Like you'll often see friends dressing similarly, or um, presenting in similar ways, even having similar expressions or similar quirky kinds of ways of wording things or expressing things, that we adopt those things with people that we're close to. And I wonder how much of that is to blend in, which is, again, a patterned response, often patterned from trauma, to fit in, to go along to get along, right? That expression, go along to get along. So we go along with things that might not be aligned with our our core in order to fit in. I think you see this with groups like gangs, right? Where people adopt other people's behavior, and then it can become like, if there's a group of friends, there can become this group think kind of thing where there's social pressure. We talk about social pressure. And when we have peer pressure, for example, that's kind of reinforcing the need for this camouflage, chameleon kind of behavior, right? Because if we don't align with the group and we're not clear enough about our own beingness, then we can often end up um, falling into patterns that truly deeply violate our own sense of self and being. And so this is something that I see as well, particularly in relationship, where our partner has different values, our partner has different priorities. And out of our love, I'm putting quotes around it because it's not just about love, out of our love, and it is often about our feeling of neediness or desire to please them, we try to shape ourselves into something that we're not. We violate our own values, we violate our own core beingness in order to adapt or please or keep that relationship, right? Like, I'm going to turn myself into a pretzel so you'll still love me, and so you won't leave me, right? This happens so easily and so often, and it can be a very slippery slope where I mean, we can look at it in terms of an abusive relationship, whether it's physically, sexually, or emotionally abusive, where it starts with anger, explosive anger, and then an apology, and we forgive that. And then it can escalate to a point where somebody starts throwing things, and we forgive that. And because we don't want to lose this person, because we love this person, because we're enmeshed with this person. And then maybe it escalates to a point where that person lays hands on us. And maybe if it's just one slap or one hit, maybe then we forgive it. And then it can escalate further and further. And what happens, this is the kind of thing that happens in an abusive relationship, is where somebody really has this sense of attachment, and also self-blame, and also forgiveness, and also love, and also fear. And like, it gets to be a very, very complex matrix of emotions that, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but ultimately we recognize how far we've strayed from ourselves. Now, that's kind of a radical example, but of camouflage, and how we become chameleons to adapt. But there is a place where that adaptive behavior, whether it's to fit into a social circle. I found myself in this group, and I really was a sore thumb in that group. Like, I just so didn't belong. I just so did not belong. These people were just not my people. And I tried to adapt. I might have been able to adapt a lot more in the past. But I tried to adapt. I just couldn't. And I came away from that group. Like, when I did try to adapt, I came away from even I came away from that group just feeling dirty, like, what was I doing there? And because it wasn't, it wasn't a place where my interests, my values were shared at all. So, it was like, I saw myself trying to fit into this group, and then I stepped back, and I was like, why am I doing that? What am I doing to myself to try to fit into this group? For what? Why would I do that? And I know that there are people that are masterful at that, and maybe reasons why to do that would be that, oh, well, these connections could be useful to me. This person can help me get here or there. I'm not a person who has relationships based on the utility of the relationship. I that. And there are cultures where it's, hi, what can you do for me, kind of relationships that people cultivate with each other, and everybody knows that everybody else is out for, what, how can you benefit me? And I guess we get to look at how well that works for us. In work situations, camouflage is pretty common, because we're in situations where there are all these other people to interact with that are not necessarily our people. So we create this adaptive mechanism, right? So Rosalind says, both. My preference is to avoid socializing when there's a new dynamic, and at the same time, I'm setting time aside to prepare to go to another gathering. A little bit of avoidance and prioritizing my time. So it's interesting, Rosalind, because it sounds like you're pretty social if you're going from one gathering to another, for sure. And I think that it's not uncommon that we get into this pattern of avoidance, not socializing, because it can be so freaking confusing, and disrupting and disorienting. But I think if we go into a situation with curiosity and groundedness, like if we're the clearer we are about ourselves, the clearer we can be in social situations. I find curiosity to be a maybe that's one of my adaptive mechanisms. In a social situation, I'll be engaging people with, like, who are you, what's your life like, what are you about, and exploring that with them, because so often, the engagement on the conversations that I value are not standard social fare. So, and in being curious, sometimes I find common ground that I never would have anticipated. So, in being curious, there's a profound possibility. So, yeah, chameleon and camouflage. So good morning, Elaine. So good to have you here with us as always. We're talking about adaptive behavior and how many of us have learned to camouflage ourselves. And what I notice is, particularly as I have come to greater awareness about my core values, and have become more solid in my being, as I have been able to become more present, that I have moved beyond those chameleon kinds of camouflaging behaviors, that I'm not trying to hide so much anymore. And I'm saying that because I don't know if there are places that I still hide. There may be degrees to which I still hide, of which I'm not aware. But I think that we get to look at, or get to feel how it feels when we camouflage ourselves, that we get to feel how it feels when we're not authentically expressing ourselves. And I believe as we become, it's interesting, as we become more whole, we maybe also become authentically more fluid in our expression and our communication. And yet I notice that there are places where, I'll stand up and say something that I wouldn't have said in the past. And Elaine says, I show up as is. And this in itself is beautiful for me. Exactly. Like when we just show up and be who we are, without turning ourselves into pretzels to try to adapt to circumstances and social situations and relationships, then our integrity, and I mean by integrity, I mean our inner integration, is remains intact. It's different to be responsive to a situation than to be adaptive in a way. At least I'm trying to tease out this nuance where where camouflage, I'm talking about camouflage as being something inauthentic versus responsiveness, which is authentic. It is responding to the situation from a place of balance and wholeness versus trying to position ourselves strategically. And here we go. Dido says, yes, backstabbing office culture. I remember feeling completely out of place once. We were all meant to be entranced by watching The Bachelor, for example. Wow. Good red flag that it was not a good match, even though I wanted the job. I so hear you, Dido. Like, I have found myself in those situations more times than I can count. And it's like walking on eggshells or being on a tightrope all the time at high alert, and how to navigate that. And this is one of the reasons I work alone, and I work with clients on an as approved basis, like I pre-interview my clients, and I actually I'm kind of proud of myself, because as I'm noticing now, not something that I thought of previously, but I've engineered a social environment that works for me. It's not that highly actively social and engaging, but it works, because I get to interact with people on a level that is relevant to me, which is really cool. Elaine says, no agenda, all are safe to be right where we are as love awakens to itself. And as much as love awakens to itself, Elaine, it doesn't mean we get along with everybody, or that we have the same connection, the same appreciation, the same vibrational match with people. So we can be right where we are, and allow for our differences, and allow for that alignment, and also make social choices that nurture us more richly. So anyway, thank you for your engagement in these conversations, and your presence here, and your just being you. I'm so grateful to all of you uh, for making these mornings possible and rich for me. And I hope that they are rich for you as well. And I just have so much appreciation and gratitude for you. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out all the other awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page, and Enlightened World Living, and EWN One with the Earth. And until next time, so much love. Thank you. And until next time.